1. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I've worked in customer service since I entered the workforce. I have worked at an amusement park, a pizza place, a hardware store, and 2 airlines. I currently work for the second of those 2 airlines. Wouldn't say which, because I like my job. It's based in the US, and I work at one of the busiest airports in the country. For my airline, in this station, customer service agents work at the ticket counter, at the gates, and in the baggage office. This story takes place in my wonderful baggage service office, where the daily routine involves lots of people screaming and crying about lost, delayed, or damaged luggage. Usually in anger, though I do have the odd person cry tears of joy when I find their bag. If you have never heard the horror stories or personally experienced them, just remember the next time you travel, when we are moving hundreds of thousands of bags, some of them are going to come in late or go to the wrong place, and some of them are going to get anywhere from scuffed up to literally destroyed. And when your bag disappears or gets melted, you come see me. Now to set the stage. It was a busy night. Not thunderstorms cancelled everything busy, but we were steady the whole shift. I just remember I had been taking report after report all day of bags left in other cities, setting those bags up to be delivered when they get in, running off to every break the second I could catch my breath. Enter our entitled dad and his crying daughter. I hadn't even closed the report I had just taken when Edie storms up to my encounter to tell me he can't find his bag. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. We have a line at the door that has a sign that tells you to wait to be called, and another door with big exit-only signs on them. But people like ED will walk right in the exit door and put themselves in front of you before you're ready to take the next person. Also, I can't stand how rude it is to shove your ticket in my face and insist my bag is lost, without so much as a simple hello. Luckily for ED, there was no one in line at the door, and I had finished what I was doing and could help him. So I start my spiel. I ask him what I can do for him. I ask him what kind of item he is missing, because half the time it's a car seat which comes separately. He then tells me it's a normal suitcase, black 22 Samsonite for those in the field. A total shock, I know. I ask for his baggage sticker so I can look it up in the system. Before I continue, I would like to give you a better description of our ET's demeanor. Like most CS workers, I've had my fair share of loud, screaming, angry, middle-aged white men. He's not quite this, no. Our ED was a bumbling, bewildered buffoon who could not wrap his little brain around the single word that left my mouth. I wanted to know what kind of bag. What do I mean? It's a bag. What other kind of bag is there? I want to see his bag or confirmation number. Why? I should be finding the bag. Why would I look it up to see if it was scanned off of his plane? He checked it in with the other bag, so it has to be here. I have to find it. This whole time, he is ignoring his 3-year-old daughter who is tugging his hand and crying that she has to go potty and that she wants her mommy. At some point, one of my coworkers tried to ask him if she could take his daughter to the bathroom for him, but he completely ignored her too. I do my best to politely explain what I'm doing in very simple terms, as I look up his bag. Sure enough, it's still in Orlando, be it the whims of TSA, the magic of bag belts, or a non-observant ramp agent. It missed his flight, and it will be coming in about 3 hours later. When I tell him this, he loses his goddamn mind. Now, for his credit, this man never screamed at me or called me names or even worse. No, he was the kind of idiot asshole that instead was completely baffled at the incomprehensible notion that his bag wasn't on his flight. And in his raised but not yelling voice, we started to go round in circles. I need my bag. It will be here in 3 hours. I can take the report and we can deliver it to you. No, I checked it in with this bag. I checked them in together. I need my bag. It didn't make the flight. How? How could it not make the flight? I checked it in with this one. I'm sorry, sir. This happens all the time. I don't know exactly why the bag didn't make it in, but we can deliver it when it gets here. My daughter's medicine is in that bag. She needs that bag. As an aside, friends, never, ever pack your medications in your checked luggage. No airline is responsible for providing you medication. Bags do get delayed or go missing. If you check anything, you should 100% be prepared to possibly not see it for the next week. And as an aside to an aside, bags do not hold hands. The bag bell does not care if you check your luggage in together or at the same time. One bag will go down one sorting belt, another will go down to TSA screening. They do not stay together. If you've ever seen the airport in Toy Story 2, that is a pretty good look at what bag belts look like. In theory, the bags all end up at the same endpoint, being your plane, but they can go to any number of places before they get there. So we go around and around like this for far too long, me trying to explain there's no way to snap his bag halfway across the country just because he needs it, and him completely and utterly incapable of comprehending that a checked bag might miss the flight, even though that's the entire point of the office he's standing in. Finally, he hears me offer to deliver his bag after I tell him for the 5th time that we can't do that. But he lives 2 hours away. That's fine, we can deliver that far out. That won't work because his daughter needs her medicine and she's going to her mother's house, which is in town. Okay, well, we can deliver there if you'd prefer, so she can have her medicine. But that won't work because he needs his clothes that are in that bag. Because even though he's home, he couldn't possibly live without a few shirts and pants for a day or two, till he could get it from his ex. That's fine too. If delivery doesn't work, we offer travel credit instead if he wants to wait around for it to come back to get it in 3 hours. We offer anywhere from $50 to $300 in travel credits, depending on how long the bag will take to get in, how far you have to drive situation to situation. If you live 10 minutes away and his bag was coming in an hour, I'd probably only offer him $50, but he lives 2 hours away, and 3 hours is a long time for him to wait in an airport with his still screaming toddler. So I offer $300 because I'm neither heartless nor unreasonable. Well, here's the thing. Here's where we see ED's true entitlement really shine. He decides that nothing I have offered him is good enough, despite it being the literal extent of what I'm allowed to offer him in this situation. You see, they've been at Disney all week, and he has a screaming toddler just in case I haven't noticed, and he's tired and very inconvenienced. So he tells me that I'm going to give him $300, I'm going to give his daughter $300, and when the bag gets in, I'm going to take the medicine out so I can deliver the bag to him and the medicine to Mom's house. Here's a simplified list of every reason he's out of his goddamn mind. 1, our policy is you get a delivery, or you come back and get the flight credit when you pick up your bag. 1 or the other, not both. 2, never in a million years am I going to agree to removing an item from a suitcase to ship separately. That would open us up to so many issues, from accusations of theft to being liable when the medicine gets lost because... 3, we do not have a way to ship something that is not a tagged bag checked in our system that has been attached to a report. We may use FedEx, but we aren't a post office. I will not ship an item anywhere unless it is a bag that was checked with my airline. And 4, this is a bag that missed its flight and got placed on the very next one. He is home, his vacation is over, we did not ruin it. He's not one of the hundreds of people who are in a wedding the next morning. No one has died? Yes, it's an inconvenient situation, and I'd be a little frustrated too, but we literally handle worse situations every day, and what I've offered him is beyond fair for his particular circumstances. Because I'm professional enough not to laugh in this man's face, I excuse myself and go let my supervisor know that this man is crazy, and I repeat to her his ridiculous demands. She sighs, says something about wondering what the screaming was, and she comes out to firmly reiterate everything I've already told him, and explained to him more than once. That being, he can have delivery to one of the 2 houses, or he can come back for 1 voucher. Enter another 25-minute circle of argument. I start taking the man's report for efficiency's sake, while he and my supervisor go back and forth, and while he doesn't exactly cave to reality, we do manage to get the report settled. How? Oh, sweet listener, this is the best, most spectacular part. This grown man, twice my age, decides that since we are being unhelpful and horrible, he will wait the whole 3 hours for his bag for the voucher, and is going to wait right in our office the whole time. He tells us this and plops his butt right down on the floor, right in front of our printer, his daughter right in the way where our oversized items get brought out for other passengers. His daughter is still screaming, still crying, repeating over and over how much she wants to go see her mommy, and I can tell exactly why mommy must have left this man. In hindsight, I wish I had told him off for putting that poor girl through this, but by this point I didn't want to push anything further. But at the same time, he had ignored my coworker who had offered to take his daughter potty, and when I asked if he'd like to take her, while I talked to my soup, he insisted he wasn't going anywhere. I decided that was fine. If this grown man was going to act like a spoiled child, he could do that. I had a job to do and other people to help while he continued to make himself and everyone else miserable. So I stepped over him to get the print out of his report. I handed it to him wordlessly and started helping the next person in line, a very sweet and very kind older woman who had seen the whole thing and was as baffled as I was. You would think that a reasonable thing here would be for him to take his daughter to her mom's house so she wouldn't have been held hostage in an airport, then come maybe have dinner somewhere or grab a drink, then come back for the bag and the voucher, and on his way home drop the medicine off. Or maybe let us deliver it to his ex's house, and when he could, get the bag some other time. But no, this man decided that he was fine throwing a tantrum in public and then sitting on the floor of a busy office for 3 hours over a very common occurrence. Thankfully, my manager came down to escort him out because my supervisor and I were too worked up to handle him further, but he was actively disrupting a place of business. Sure enough, 3 hours later, the bag came in, and he came back and quietly accepted the voucher. I hope he took his daughter over to her mother's, because she wasn't with him when he came back. Some closing thoughts. This guy is truly one of the worst customers I've ever had to deal with, which is why it lives in my brain rent-free. For all the horrible people that scream at me and seem to think I personally lost their bags, we do get a good handful of folks that are very understanding, or at the very least, patient enough to let us help them the best we can. No one comes to me for good reasons, but I want to fix the damage as best we can. If anyone has the ability to snap their fingers and make things appear from across space and time, please come work in my office. If I had not been on the clock, I like to think I would have yelled at him to worry less about his bag and more about his daughter. But hindsight is 20/20, and I am burdened with the curse of every customer service worker that is acting restrained on the clock. I hope she got to her mother quickly after they left. Lastly, every airline is different and has different policies and procedures. If you go into a baggage office and demand $300 in vouchers because that's the number I wrote down as being a maximum, the spirit of my customer service fury will find you and haunt you, and I actually will personally go lose your bag. 2. My first real job was a referee for soccer. Football to the rest of the world. I worked for the local club and would usually get 2 or 3 games a weekend at the same field. Because it was a local club, I knew players and parents throughout the different teams, and in general things went well. One coach, Karen, knew me from my summer swim club. She was normally very nice, and I had been the ref of a couple of their games the previous season. They moved up an age group this season, and it was their first with goalies. Most of the teams had a couple kids who would play goalie, and it was normally the athletically gifted, since they could actually stop shots or disrupt attackers. Our Karen had taught their goalies to go grab the ball. If you would play football, you can probably see we're telling 9 to 10-year-olds to just go grab the ball, maybe a bad idea. The goalies were running out and reaching for the ball as the attackers were still dribbling it. The attackers were not ready for this, and the first time it happened, it worked really well because the surprise meant the goalie picked up the ball without any real challenge. This was the last time the attackers were surprised. The next time down the field, the goalie comes running out to grab the ball, and the attacker just kicks it past her. No big deal, good choice, since you know the keeper runs out too far. Well, apparently our Karen disagreed because what I heard was, "Yep, it's not. Why didn't you call that?" I was understandably confused as it was fair play and there was nothing to call. My logic went offside as that is potentially what happened. But I was confident it was not, as I could see 2 defenders behind the keeper when the pass was made and no player was really running forward from the attacker. Game went on. Another attack is coming in. This time the keeper dives for the ball, and the attacker has a poor strike straight into the keeper's stomach. I hold up play to get the coach out to check her player. She comes to me, rather than the player, red-faced, and yells, "Why didn't you call that penalty?" I'm again confused, as nothing was wrong with any of the play that would normally be a penalty. And I ask, "What are you talking about?" Karen proceeds to yell at me that I was ignoring goalie interference, and that her player was hurt because I didn't call it earlier, so the team just kept going at the goalie. In my head, I'm starting to panic a little because as a 14-year-old, being yelled at by an adult is very stressful for me. I managed to get some semblance of control and reply, "That wasn't interference. The other player had the ball. Your goalie tried to grab it from them and they kicked it, which is fine. Unfortunately, I didn't have all the customer service experience I have now, so I failed to realize that no matter what, it was my fault." Our Karen's response to my answer, "How can you say that? My goalie is right there grabbing the ball. They have to be protected from being hurt. You screwed up and that means my player was hurt." As I was completely overwhelmed by her yelling at me, I decided to just try to get the game going again, and I said, "I will watch for it." Huge mistake, because there wasn't anything to watch for. I did go check in with the goalie and told her that if the other player was still kicking the ball, that she should get big and block the goal, rather than trying to grab it. She thanked me for the advice, and the game resumed. I thought we were good now because the goalie was doing much better and even stopped a couple shots playing the way I encouraged. Well, this wouldn't be a story if that was the end of it. Halftime came and went. Apparently the coach had a discussion because, first chance, goalie tries to come and grab the ball off the player's foot. Thankfully, this time the attacker just made a nice move and scored, so no injury. Except to Karen's ego.
"Yabasanaald, what the hell was that? That was a penalty we should not have been scored on."
Something happened in that moment. I only remembered one thing that I learned in referee training. That field is your field when you are the center ref. You can send people off, and you do not have to put up with abuse. Thankfully, an amazing mentor who helped me so much had showed me how to deal with an angry parent and discussed it with me a couple times. Remembering Lionel's teachings, I walked over to the sideline and said, "Coach, may I speak to you over here?" and invited Karen onto the field. She stepped over with me a few feet away from the sideline. "I understand that you're asking me to call a penalty every time your goalie goes for the ball with her hands. That was not a penalty. The goalie is allowed to put herself in the way. But it's her call. If she does and they kick it away from her, that's not a penalty. It's soccer. A penalty is if she has possession of the ball in her hands, and they try to kick it out, or she dives on it and covers it up, and they kick it after she has it. That is not happening, and every time the other team still has control." Well, this went over like one would expect.
"That is wrong, you know that is wrong, and we will be calling the referee coordinator after to tell her about your mistakes. You must start making the right call now, because our player is going to be hurt because of you."
Forgive me for what I did next, because I was 14 years old. I responded as calmly as my nervous and shaken self could. "No, I will not, and if you yell at me about it again, you have to leave the area and cannot return until I have left." In my head, I wanted her to yell at me in that moment. I wanted to either call the game a forfeit or be able to get her the hell away from me. Neither happened. Instead, I was told,
"Oh, Yabasanaald, you can't make me leave. Just make the right call and you will be fine."
She walked back to the sideline smug as could be. I knew it was coming and decided to say something to the keeper about what was and was not a penalty. I warned her if she dove for the ball and was harmed, it was not a penalty, and that being big and blocking was safer and more effective. Clearly the keeper was more worried about the coach than me. Next attack, she makes a dive for the ball, and the attacker kicked it hard straight into her face. No blood, but it 100% hurt. Karen starts screaming at me and calling me a horrible person for not protecting her player. I responded in a very 14-year-old with some power way and shout, "That's it, get the hell away from my field." Karen, of course, looks at me like I grew a third eye and some tentacles and shouts,
"You can't make me leave. I am a coach, and you're just a referee."
I hit that cold calm we all feel when you realize you are in the right, and that even if shit hits the fan, ultimately you are still going to be right. Karen, you have 30 seconds to be beyond that fence, about 300 feet away by the parking lot. I will report a forfeit to the club for your team. I look down at my watch and wait. She stands there dumbfounded and in shock. We did keep records, and there was a tournament teams took way too seriously at the end of the season. The team with the best record was also crowned champions of their age group. The other parents started to tell her to just walk away and that they would take care of him when they spoke to the club. I hit the 30-second mark and I raised my hand and put my whistle in my mouth to call it a forfeit. Karen finally realized I wasn't kidding, and she seemed to maybe think it was stick as a loss, so she walked to the fence. Her assistant tried to explain, "She was just trying to protect our player." I ignored him, and the rest of the game went okay, till the final whistle. Karen starts walking back over to the field. I noticed and shouted, "Hey, if you take another step closer, it's a forfeit." She just ignored me and walked to the field. Her team had won, but at that point I blew the game end and shouted, "Forfeit, other team wins." She blew up at me and just started calling me spoiled and that she was going to get me fired and that I was in serious trouble. Thankfully, it was my last game and my dad was waiting for me. I got in the car and just bawled all the way home because I couldn't speak. I called the club's ref coordinator and explained what happened and the results of the games. The ref coordinator promised to never schedule me for her games the rest of the season, and did back me up, saying that it sounded like I did the right thing. I just hoped the whole thing was done, and I wouldn't have to deal with any of this again. Yeah, not happening. That next week, our referee coordinator called me and let me know that the club no longer needed me to referee because of my immature behavior at that game, and she chewed me out for talking to an adult so disrespectfully. I started crying again and was crushed because I loved refereeing, and the pay was quite good. At that moment, my mom stepped in and decided to see if she could help. Mom called the club's overall director, and apparently 2 of the board members, and shared my story. She asked them to check with the other team and coach to see if maybe my story was a better fit, because of course the whole talk to the coach politely as a warning, and the attempts to tell the keeper the safer way to play were left out, as was the fact that this adult was screaming at me from the sideline and during the game. It was entirely just some kid told an adult to pound sand when she was just protecting her player. I'm not sure of all the steps. I only know who my mom called to help me because she told me names and I know what their role was. The outcome was another call from the assistant referee coordinator, who let me know that I would still be receiving assignments and not to worry. I would not have to deal with that team as they would put me at different fields from where they played. To me, I was just relieved that I still had my job. At 14, being fired for doing what I was sure was right was just painful. I also know that I never heard from the main referee coordinator again. I know she was still involved with the club as she was at some of the pre-season meetings the next couple years, just not sure what she was doing. Karen did get to keep coaching, but the forfeit stayed, and in the end, they were in the middle of the pack. One more win would have sort of helped, but not a lot really. Their opponent was at the same level, so that one change was not a big deal. I know it would not have moved either team to the trophies for the top 3. I remained a ref until I was 20, when I just decided I was too busy. It was not the last time I had issues with a coach, but it was the one that still sticks with me. I actually coached the same club I played with as a kid, and my kids have played for the club since they were little. I love coaching, and one of my favorite parts that is if you treat a referee with even the slightest hint of disrespect, it's a ban. Not just for you, your kids too. 100% for 1 year, and permanently from trying out for competitive levels. The club at some point, and the State Soccer Commission, decided that allowing adults to yell at kids is not okay. 3. Okay, first a little context. I work at a water park roughly 30 minutes away from my house. And I got my job from being friends with the director and having a friend in the business. But don't think for a second that I don't work. I'm the second hardest working person there, and I've received Employee of the Month twice in the single year I've worked there. So I knew people there, and people liked me. I don't particularly like kids, but I can handle them well enough. The water park also has 2 sections, the kids' side and the adult side. This story takes place in the kids' side of the park. All my fellow employees hate working the play structure. It's got a slide, and kids are annoying. So I decided to take it for the day. Take one for the team, you know? So I was up in the play structure, and my job was to send kids down the slide when it was safe for them to go. This little girl comes up to the top and wants to go down. I wait a second until I see the other kids start to get out, then turn to tell the girl she can go. But she's already halfway down the slide. She nearly hits the kid because he was slow to get out. She comes back up, and I kneel down and say, "Hey, that was dangerous. You could have hit that kid and both gotten hurt. Please wait for me to tell you when it's safe to go down this slide." She nodded, and actually followed my instructions. But this is when she broke the rules again. At the entrance to the play structure, there's a sign that gives the rules. Wait for the worker to let you go down before going down the slide. And you aren't allowed to go face first. She decided to ignore Rule 2 and went down face first. She came back up again, so I knelt down and said, "Hey, you can't go down head first, you could hurt yourself." She nodded, and then went down head first again anyway. The play structure works on a 3-strike system, so that was her third time breaking the rules. I had to kick her off the slide. So when she came back up and started to walk towards the slide, I stepped in her way and said, "I'm sorry, you broke the rules 3 times, so you can't go down anymore." She yelled at me and tried to push her way past, but I'm bigger and stronger than her, so she couldn't get through, and went back down the stairs in a huff. A solid 10 minutes pass. Then she comes back up holding her mother's hand. Her mom says, relatively calmly at first, "My daughter told me you told her she couldn't go down this slide anymore. Is that true?" "That's correct, ma'am." She asked me why, so I explained that if a person breaks the rules 3 times, they can't go down the slide. She gets closer to me and says, "Okay, I understand that, but she's 4 years old." I respond with, "Ma'am, it doesn't matter how old she is, she still broke the rules 3 times, so she can't go down the slide anymore today." She gets even closer and says, "Okay, but she's 4. I respond with, "I understand, but the rules apply to big kids the same as they do to the small kids, so she can't go down anymore today." Now I'm 19, close to 20, relatively tall, not super muscular, white and gay. A lot of people tend to notice that last one, since I don't try to hide it. You can usually tell based on my mannerisms and the way I talk. Another thing I deal with, severe anger issues. And based on trauma from my childhood, people being in close proximity to my face makes me incredibly uncomfortable. This lady was maybe an inch away from my face when she started yelling at me and calling me, well, I am gay, guess what she called me. I was so close to losing my cool. I could actually feel my face turning beet red. My hands were balled into fists and my jaw was incredibly tense. A bit more about me. I might look like a scrawny white kid. When I get angry, I look like a demon, not my words. I wasn't even doing anything, and I was terrifying her daughter. In an attempt to keep my cool and get this wail out of my face, I said, "Ma'am, please don't call me slurs. It's uncalled for and rude. I'm only doing my job." To my surprise, she actually got out of my face, scoffed, and said, "Let's go find someone in charge." Apparently, she had a day pass, because I saw her later that evening talking to my manager. She looked over and saw me cleaning, and I just hear, "That's him." My manager, Herm, who hates me by the way, comes over to me and asks me if I assaulted this woman's daughter. I of course said I didn't, but because he's a rampant asshead, he went to look at the cameras anyway. He saw that I was right in what I did and that I did everything according to procedure. We then went over to talk to the lady. She said, "Well, is he in trouble or not?" Herm looks at her and says, "He never did anything wrong, and he never assaulted your daughter." Then he gets this strange look and asks for her day pass. At first she refused to give it to him, then relents and gives Herm her pass. Turns out she wasn't even supposed to be here. Her pass had expired the day before. But she just didn't leave the hotel. So I had the privilege of escorting her to her room, waiting outside while they packed, and then escorting them out of the building. She was cussing me out the whole way out the park, in front of her 4-year-old daughter, no less. Mom of the year, everyone. As we got out to her car, right as she got in, I said, "Thanks for coming to the park. Feel free to never come again," with the biggest grin on my face, because that was not my first Karen. At least it ended well. When I got inside, my manager told me I handled that situation very well, and I had a pretty uneventful end of the night. So please remember not to be rude to the workers because we're often right. 4. This happened a few months back. My kid has several disabilities. He was 11 when this happened. We went to a park that has a really nice sand pit for kids to play in. It's really big, has a sand and water table, as well as 2 of those play diggers that look like real equipment used on construction sites. My son was absolutely delighted. We pulled out his sand toys, which are a collection of buckets, rakes, and mini shovels. He happily sat down and waited his turn to play with one of the diggers. All the other children wandered off to play in the swings, and he hopped up to play with one of the diggers. I was sitting pretty close by because I'm sensitive to how other people treat him. I noticed a very small boy, maybe 2, was playing with the sand toys we had brought along. I didn't say anything since we have been sharing the toys with everyone, and the kid was playing nicer with them. All of a sudden I hear, "Hey!" I look over and there is a woman standing next to my son. Part of his disability is he often doesn't respond when he's being spoken to. He kept on playing,
"Hey, I'm talking to you."
I stood up and started walking quickly to where she was. By this point, my son had noticed her and was frozen in place.
"My kid wants to play with that. You're old enough to know that you should always let the little kids play if they want to."
I walk up beside my son and said, "What's the problem?" It's important to note that I'm only 4'11".
"Is this your brother? He's hogging all the toys."
"Ma'am, this is my son. There are plenty of other things to play with." She looked me up and down and said,
"What? Were you 15 when you had him? You're obviously lying. My son wants this digger. Your kid needs to give it to him."
She pointed at her son, who was very happily playing with the water table and our buckets, not even looking our way. I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not instructing my kid to give up the toy he waited his turn for, and he has only been playing with for 5 minutes. There is another digger next to the table your child is playing with."
"This is ridiculous. Big kids don't need to play in the sand. Only small children get to play with the toys."
At this point, my son was hunched over and trying hard not to cry. I reassured him he absolutely did not have to give up the toy. "Ma'am, there is another digger right next to your child. If he really wants to play with one of these diggers, he could play with that one." She was definitely turning red and went on a very long rant about how older kids should respect younger kids and just give them what they want. In the meantime, her kid wandered off. I silently pointed to where her child was attempting to climb up the slide. She turned around, stormed over to him, picked him up, and then called, I'm assuming, her husband. She loudly complained about how evil big kids were keeping her baby from enjoying himself. There was still a digger, with no kids playing on it, that her kid could have played with. She sat and glared at us for a while before packing up and leaving. She stole our bucket, by the way, and called me a teenage whore. I'm 40, just really short. 5. I was at the playground with my kids, spelling out my son's name with him using the 10 bark off the ground. We were working on the small retaining wall on the outskirts of the playground, far from other people, not in the middle of the playset or anything. We got through his first name and were working on the second, when a little kid comes by driving his toy truck through the letters. I gave him a smile and asked him to not drive here. He walked away fine and I resumed working with my son. The kid comes our way again, so I put my arm across the space to give a visual barrier and ask him to turn the truck around and drive back the other way now. All smiles, the kid was fine doing as requested. Then a few minutes later, he comes back with a second little kid and his dad following along as well. Same thing happens, except when he gets to my arm, the barrier in his path, I ask him to turn around and drive the other way. He ignores my request and instead smashes the truck into the middle of where we were working. I gently but quickly moved his arm away and moved in front of him while telling him, "Please don't drive your truck here. We were working on something and you're being rude." The dad explodes. "You watch your language. How dare you talk to a child like that? You watch your fucking language." Surprised and starting to shake because this dad was apparently a crazy man, I try to assume the best and say, "Oh, I was just asking him to not drive here, because I'm helping my son write his name with the wood chips." "He doesn't know any better. He's 2. He doesn't know what he's doing." Very confused and unsure of what we're supposed to do at this point, I say, "Oh, I think he does know. He listened when I told him before." The guy gets in my face and bellows, "You watch your fucking language. There are children in this park. You need to watch your language." Genuinely terrified and confused, I take my now crying son, and we leave the park. Only after leaving did I think that calling the police would have been an appropriate course of action. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to The Impractical Proudness of Parents, Ipop, episode 97. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, if you could please put the like button and share the video around with friends and family members. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see. I think we've actually got a little birthday shout out to do today, I believe. Let's take a look in the birthday folder. And yes, I do. We have one today that goes to Nova. Nova Brilliant. You'll possibly see Nova in the comments. They got the kind of cute little blonde avatar with the glasses. Oh, yes. Well, I won't go into everything, but it's not been a very good year for them. So hopefully things start looking up. Now, I know you did say you'd not be having cake this year because you're trying to be healthy, and I do respect that. But just make sure you have some treats. I mean, the fact that you can actually get some good low-calorie ice creams, like very, very low in calorie, which are very yummy as well. So, just putting that out there. Okay, now, before I go, I'd like to sing happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nova. Happy birthday to you. And I truly hope the next year is much, much better than the preceding one for you, Nova. Okay. Now, before we go, let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, what is your favorite alternative, inspired by Nova, your favorite alternative to birthday cake if you don't like cake? If it was me, I'd probably go for a nice apple crumble. Now, if you've never had an apple crumble before, I feel bad for you, but it's basically an apple pie, but instead of a pie crust on top, it's lovely crumbly, crumbly, sugary, buttery, yummy stuff on top, and you bake that instead of a pie crust. It's nice with custard, or it's just nice on its own. But let me know what you think. Give me some ideas. Maybe some things I'll try. So leave your ideas in a comment below, please. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.